Bitcoin would have to experience a great bullish party, but well, that's what the Zetas are for. In the case of Bitcoin and Ethereum, we would expect strong structural breaks with confirmation. What direction does the direction of a bearish impulse take? That we now look for that bullish correction. One thing is to look for it, another thing is to act impulsively. That's a little bit the map, the concept I have in mind with crypto in general. And let's start with Bitcoin, right? We have here the chart of Bitcoin in its 1 hour time frame. We were already talking about buyer weakness, about not having reached that top of the macro uptrend channel, which, hey, is not all sentenced yet, far from it. I mean, it's not something that is inevitable. Everything is still on the table, as in the end, what we are doing is monitoring the market structure with this guideline. Basically, here, all the current price narrative is being contained. You know we're coming from a wedge that has broken in a very, very aggressive way, and that the price is being defended. With this trend line is not going to be infinite. It has its lifespan. It has its expiration date. It can be seen, but it justifies all these failed attempts. Okay, what are we seeing now then? What we see now is that it has taken a somewhat curious acceleration in the end in the form of a wedge, where we see that they are compressing the price during the entire rise. And while in Bitcoin is not seen, because Bitcoin does not allow us to see information that I want to share with you. Let's see how other cryptos, such as Ethereum, allow us to see if we can be facing a Z, a complex corrective pattern that they are compressing against a relevant structure. And this is something we must not overlook. Now you are seeing the chart of Ethereum, which has not told us to change the chart, but if you notice, the chart is tremendously similar. It doesn't change much, obviously, with its levels and its slightly different structure, but they go very much in parallel, or at least we have seen that it could be seen in the following way. In Ethereum, they've also worked on a wedge. Unlike Bitcoin, they have indeed touched a relevant structure that we have been observing, that macro structure, a macro structure on which they have compressed the price and have already generated the impulse and the accompaniment with this guideline. In the same way that with Bitcoin we saw that we are dangerously close to the guideline. If we zoom in here, we will see that the same thing is happening exactly. And if we pay attention specifically to the last bearish impulse, to this bearish impulse here, which ultimately comes from a distribution that was worked as a compression against this structure, we see that we are working on a complex corrective pattern. Let's remember that we come from a strong bearish impulse, that here we have AEW, this is AI, and now we are experiencing an aggressive Z. An aggressive Z, which as many of you already know, is one of its characteristics when it seeks this aggressive and sharp modality. One of its characteristics is not knowing how far it will take us. What do we mean by this? That if they want to, they can keep extending this without us knowing how far it will go. What information does it give us? Well, one thing is clear, and that is that we have that preference, that bullish direction for the immediate term, that we have to keep thinking like that. But the information it gives us is that as soon as we see the level being pierced, as it is being attempted right now, if we see a strong breakout, then we will have a bias to continue looking down for the immediate term. So, in the end, we have that moral. This can fail here, who knows? This can keep going up and 1,000 things can happen, but we have to monitor these wedges with that preference to look up until the market tells us, no friend, I'm already breaking structures in a deterministic way. Therefore, it's time to start looking the other way. If we marry this with Cardano, for example, we will see something really similar, very, very, very similar. In the case of Cardano, we have been working on a macro sister channel. Here I am already saying it. This is an impulse that is being accompanied by a channel. This, well, it takes time, it takes range. It's a 4-hour chart, but I wanted to put you a little bit in context. Let's go down to 1 hour. Okay, and here's what we're going to see in Cardano. Then we'll go see Solana, which Solana seems to me like an open book, and lately Solana has been very, very useful. You already know the immense usefulness we have been getting from Solana. Well, here we have Cardano also in an hour. These 2 points have caught my attention, offering us an inclination that apparently is minimal, but it exists, and we see how recently we have come to look for it. That in itself also means nothing, but if you notice visually, what are we seeing visually? Like the entire crypto ecosystem has been rising in a very programmatic way, where it is compressed more and more. It is compressed, and there comes a moment when it could easily be today when things are decided. At least for the immediate and short term. Later I will share my opinion on the medium-long term. More like medium term. I don't care. I'll tell you now. It's about looking up and then I'll justify it to you. However, for a long bearish, if you want, let's talk about this now so you can follow my train of thought better. Okay, let's do it with Ethereum, which I think is easier to see. But first, welcome to Crypto Insight, your ethical and moral channel for cryptocurrency technical analysis. Here, we really know what we're talking about. We conduct advanced technical analysis that has been developed for over 12 years. We upload videos several times a week. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, let me know and leave a comment with your opinion. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell so you don't miss the next opportunity. Okay, we have reached a level, let's see, all this Ethereum. All this is a macro Z, right? We already talked about this in previous videos, in previous sessions. Remember that simply that Z surprised us by continuing to rise. But we were already looking for that Z. We were already looking for it, but well, it kept going. It kept going, and it kept going, until it broke, basically, right? From here, we should follow this type of wedges in very specific circumstances, right? This is not about seeing how they compress the price and say, okay, I'll draw a wedge, and if it breaks, I'll do something. It's not that simple. You have to understand where to start looking for it, because wedges can be found everywhere. If you set your mind to it, you find them everywhere, but you have to understand in what context to look for them, okay? That's important. I make this small disclaimer because, well, to avoid that you get, well, to practice and look for wedges and draw your own conclusions. I think that's the most appropriate message. Okay, here you have it. This is a Z in itself. It has broken strongly. When we break a wedge of a Z normally, where the impulse of the breakout ends, they usually fix there, or it tends to be the relevant level, the creek, that they may try to pierce in the future. In other words, here we have the guideline of the Z. That said, of course, we are in a 1-hour chart with a bird's eye view. What does this mean? Well, it means that we have a bearish impulse and that here it has to correct this. We'll see how, and it will have an intentionality that we don't know if it will be successful or not, but by its nature, it will have an intentionality of trying to pierce it. As I said, we'll see if it succeeds or not. In the case that it doesn't, well, this gives a lot of strength to a quite explosive opposite continuation, because in the end, we would be facing an unexpected event. But something like this is what we are looking for. Under this hypothesis that I mentioned to you, of course, if we are already thinking about a correction of a bearish impulse, what direction does the direction of a bearish impulse take? Well, bullish, because we want to see how this corrects. We'll see how, but we're looking for this so that at some point there is that intention to break the creek, which will be seen. Okay, what we are looking for now is that correction, that we look for that correction to the sister. One thing is to look for it. Another thing is to act impulsively. What do I mean? We are monitoring this guideline. Its aggressive breakout with confirmation can give us the hypothesis. A strong breakout with confirmation strengthens the hypothesis of looking up. But as I said, we must not forget that we are now in the corrective pattern of a micro-bearish impulse, and that we are now in its Z. What does that mean? First, that Z, we don't know if they are going to break it now to be explosive, whose Z would fail, almost certainly, right? They could go down a little, but for me the idea would gain strength. But this micro-Z, what can this micro-Z really do? We don't know how far it will go, but if they decide to break it forcefully, okay, there will be a bearish bias, but not infinite. They don't have to break it and go, they don't have to. And this can then give the idea that regarding all this bearish impulse, here we have AEW. This could be that we are now in the process of forming a small macro I, a poor macro I, to then seek the breakout of all this compression to look for a macro Z, not a micro Z, the current one. That's a hypothesis, and this hypothesis would work with the concept of I have an impulse. I make a correction, and in the future, I will try to break. Trying is not a guarantee, but that's a bit the map, the concept I have in mind with crypto in general. And I think Ethereum in this case illustrates it quite well. Not that the word easy should be used in this world because it wouldn't be coherent, but Ethereum is very illustrative to convey this concept to you. Then Solana also supports this hypothesis. What do you say, guys? Do you understand a bit? I've tried to be very explanatory. I understand that, damn. There are things that for many will be totally new and may not be easy to follow, but can you follow what is explained? Let's see, Los Galos Hermanos says it's perfectly understood. Carmeo Luna is understood. Well, these two members are also part of the premium who are connected almost every day watching the live streams. It's understandable that they are following it. Let's see how those of you who are not usually in the live streams are doing, since we have made it quite open. See if you give feedback in the chat. Fabiano, Crypto Strategy, tells us it's very clear. Miguel Alcazar, okay sign. Gustavo Ponte also says it's understood. Okay, the explanation we've just given, right? The one where this Z tends to collapse, but in the end, this will tend to go for a macro Z, of course. Let's see if it happens. I mean, we are now in a Z, and we don't know if this Z will continue explosively. It could be, It could be. Basically, in terms of structure, we will follow up, see how this breaks if it does, and how it validates for us to understand that the Z simply continues and that we are already going with explosiveness. But instead, we are also following this wedge at the same time in case it breaks strongly, that after a breakout we will look for that mini correction before breaking. Here I have made the small disclaimer, which yes, is very important. It is very, very, very important to take this into account. In the end, remember that we do not pretend to predict the future, since that is 100% impossible. But we seek to understand what the smart money may be doing, and based on the behavior we see in the price, based on the structure and how they operate, we make one decision or another. Okay, let's see. Solana has corrected quickly in its last minutes. Let me go to 5 minutes, 1 second. Well, quickly. This drop is not so dramatic either. Okay, let's analyze Solana. As I told you, let's see what Solana tells us, which I had advanced, that Solana was, wow, quite an open book, huh? Okay, let's go to an hour. Look, Solana, what are we evaluating here? Well, there's this macro wedge, right? That we have seen how in Ethereum, like in Bitcoin, like everywhere, how the whole ecosystem has worked a wedge that has collapsed in the way they have to do it. If they collapse a wedge for you and smart money is behind it, they're going to do it like this with strong aggressiveness. That's how you should expect it, okay? We have the breakout here. We have identified a structure that encompasses all this work, evaluating the option. Let's see if we break it in the future or not. Okay, on this idea, what do we have here? We have a bearish impulse. A bearish impulse that has now formed the W, and we could take this as a very poor I and now be facing a Z. Similarly, we could take all of this as a single move and assess if the price decides to stop here to retrace, as we were considering with the Ethereum chart. So, we would assess this single impulse as a poor U, and then definitely go for an aggressive Z that, if you ask me, could happen to go for that level of 78 of Bitcoin, for example. Let's go to Bitcoin for a second and continue with Solana. We'll see if they do it like this or not, but I see it a bit far now, honestly. Bitcoin would have to experience a great bullish rally, but well, that's what the Zetas are for. Honestly, I don't know if they're going to come here, which could be to generate a macro trap for later. But well, this part, take it with a grain of salt. Stick with everything I'm explaining to you, all of this. Okay, do you realize that depending on what we experience now, what is the real moral of the story? There is that bullish bias, but there may be a previous correction to look for the Z. In the end, that's it. If the price corrects, it's because it's a Z, but at the same time, it could be a poor ride that then goes to look for its Z. But we have to look for the collapse. And how do we look for the collapse? Well, with the follow-up of the wedges that you are seeing in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and in all the cryptos that we have been analyzing. What could happen? It could happen that this is a W, and it could happen that this Y is not poor, it's complete, it exceeds the size to wherever it wants, and then we will go look for that bearish move. As mentioned, we are in transcripts facing ZS that, if they feel like it, keep going up, and we can't know that. How can we follow up on it? It has already been explained. In the case of Bitcoin and Ethereum, we would expect strong structural breakouts with confirmation both in Bitcoin and in Ethereum. And this way we know if that Z are going to delay. Therefore, Solana would go for a normal I, which would be part of a simple corrective pattern without... That's the issue. Okay, we're going to Solana, and we're going to... I want to share more information about Solana with you, which I also find very interesting, okay? What else do we see here? Well, if we're now saying that we're facing a poor IAZ, whatever you want, that if it's a Z, it's because it's going to retrace, but to look for a macro Z. What do we see here? Well, in the very direction of the corrective pattern of the preceding bearish impulse, here they have compressed the price. They have gone through an accumulation process whose second institutional target, which is this line here, leads us to a defense zone that we have been working on. Not only this, but if we look for a harmonic, let's go down 15 minutes, perhaps to 30. If we see this harmonic, we will see that this bullish impulse has a replica that projects us here. For now, it's a failure. And what if it fails? If it fails, we can look for opposite structures to seek that bearish directionality. In other words, we would be breaking the wedge of the zeta. Therefore, it pushes us down in the immediate short term. Yes, obviously, we did not reach that area. And well, we can also reach it and then break wedges, right? Without a doubt, Solana tells us, okay, we are already at a key level in which everything can change in terms of directionality. In the same way, it also tells us, well, hey, we can go to the harmonic, we can go to the second institutional target, and then evaluate a breakout, either from the current module or from this point downwards. All this if you see it rise before with the left eye, never with the right eye, glancing at the bullish structures of Bitcoin and Ethereum, of which we spoke a moment ago. I can't tell you anything else, okay? I can't give you any more information, okay? I've shared absolutely everything I have in my head. There's nothing more, and nothing from here on out. Look look for opportunities, after structural macro bullish breaks of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and company, or wait for the wedge to break aggressively, from which we will look for short entries. In the end, we will wait for the next minutes or hours to see what the market tells us, and then act accordingly with the whole map that I just shared with you. It's not just about waiting, okay? It breaks the test. I look for purchases. Hey, it's not about it breaks the wedge and on a pullback I start selling. It's not just this, but in the whole map that I have represented to you, we can also look for many more things. If you found this advanced technical analysis interesting, let me know in the comments. Also, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell so that YouTube notifies you of future publications. And of course, share this content with your friends and with other trading and cryptocurrency communities. Well guys, I wish you good luck with your operations today, tomorrow, and see you in the next one. See you later!